I guess I'll just introduce myself. I'm Ben, co-founder of Temporal, just kind of like an R&D firm on Solana. We just do all sorts of, really boutique in the weeds, technical stuff around, DeFi, L1 blockchains, stuff like that. One of the things that we do is, more core focused Solana research and development. So we think a lot about how do you actually make the Solana L1 protocol better. And what does the future of the Solana protocol itself look like? So we spent a lot of time with a lot of the main core development teams. So we spent a lot of time with Anza, we spent a lot of time with Firedancer, and we really care about the future of the Solana network. Without further ado, I'll just discuss a few of the things that are coming for Solana, and kind of how you can expect the L1 protocol to change in the future. So I'll just introduce myself further. So my background's mostly like high frequency trading. Used to be at Acuna, then was at Citadel. Big high frequency trading background. Studied math and CS in school before dropping out, and mostly dropped out so I could focus on cryptography, high performance computing, crypto basically. So let's just talk about a few of the things that are coming up for the Solana protocol. So recently what was activated was SIMD 96. That one was voted through for the protocol. So this basically just removes the priority fee burn. So 100% of the priority fees are returned to validators. And the reasoning for that was just essentially you had all these people doing side deals, fast lanes, priority lanes, stuff like that. And it didn't really, the burn didn't make a lot of sense because it would just create a lot of circumvention of said burn. Like Jito, for example, would return a lot closer to 100% of those fees to validators. So it didn't really make sense to burn them. So that was voted through by the validators. And then there's SIMD 123, which is coming up. This is basically natively sharing block rewards with stakers. So right now there's also a lot of backroom deals and side deals for validators to share block rewards, right? And essentially what this does is kind of just simplifies and streamlines the process and puts it in protocol, right? So some people are opposed to this SIMD, particularly because they argue it'll just create a race to zero for the block rewards, and that validators or running validators, especially like a small one, won't be as economically viable. But proponents would argue that this is money that should go back to stakers, and it's largely already being shared with stakers anyway. And I mean, I personally would think this is kind of a race to zero anyways, but what this means is stakers are probably going to make a lot more money coming up soon, because this is just going to make it a lot easier for validators to share those block rewards. And we'll probably see validators keeping a lot less of the block rewards as the result of this change. So one we've been talking about a lot lately is multiple concurrent proposers. And the motivation behind multiple concurrent proposers is essentially to make the chain more censorship resistant and to create a better market structure for users, right? What we're seeing is a lot of protocols, and especially a lot of DeFi protocols, are taking their business off chain. Essentially, they're making off-chain RFQs, they're making off-chain order books, they're making centralized single sequencer ETH L2s. They're basically doing anything but building a market on the Solana blockchain. And you have to ask yourself, why are people why are people moving their DeFi protocols? Why are people moving their markets off chain? And it just kind of comes down to the market structure on Solana is really bad right now, right? You have a very high proposer rent, right? And basically what I mean by that is that there's just an insane amount of MEV that you can extract within a 1.6 second window. And that's all money that you're kind of just taking from users and not really giving back to them. It's basically a tax the chain is taking on users. So MCP, we expect to massively reduce total MEV and overall make the chain a lot more competitive with Binance, OKX, off-chain RFQs, off-chain order books, centralized ETH L2s, right? If we want Solana to be competitive on that front, we need to innovate on the market structure level. And that's essentially what MCP would enable is a market structure that, gives better prices to users theoretically. It's not the only way to do this. Like, a lot of people want to massively reduce slot times, and there's plenty of other ideas out there. Some would say multiple concurrent proposers is too complicated or uses too much bandwidth, right? So this is something that's being debated a lot right now. But, Anza and Max, if he's here, I know he's here somewhere, are trying to push this through because, they believe it'll be net positive for markets on Solana in the long term. So SIMD228 is the one that's currently being debated. The TLDR of what this one is it's going to reduce inflation, right? So the staking inflation rewards are going to go down a lot. Right now we have like 6% inflation. Upon implementation of SIMD228, the inflation would actually be cut essentially in half, right? A little over in half at the current staking rate, right? So, like people think essentially we're overpaying for economic security of the network because a lot of people are already staking, and that this inflation essentially creates a downward pressure on the price. This inflation, there's also tax implications, right? Like I personally think it's kind of a policy failure of, how staking rewards are treated at the tax level, or at least what the IRS says about this, right? So, this will reduce selling pressure because right now they'll earn staking rewards and all of a sudden they owe a tax liability on those staking rewards. That creates more and more downward pressure on the price. So SIMD228 would essentially minimize sell pressure on Solana as a result of like tax burden from staking rewards. And it'll also reduce the tax that like a lot of big validators, say like, I mean, I won't name any big validators, but like there's some big validators taking huge tax on staking rewards, and a lot of people think the network is kind of overpaying these big validators and for that economic security right now. Again, opponents of this proposal are going to argue, things like, okay, this reduces yet another revenue stream for validators. Maybe this makes it even harder to compete as a small validator. Inflation can actually stimulate the economy and make the asset attractive to newer investors. So this is the big SIMD debate that's going on in Solana right now. We're probably, at least my team is probably slightly in favor of this proposal, mostly just due to what we see as various policy failures in the United States and abroad of how staking is treated. But again, this is very hotly debated, so definitely encourage everyone to get out and actually discuss this SIMD if they're, involved in Solana economics core, if they run validators. Another one coming up is async execution, right? So this decouples execution from consensus. What that means is essentially I can pack a block without actually replaying that block. And that actually massively reduces the hardware burden on validators. And this will actually massively reduce the hardware requirements to run a validator because of how expensive it is to actually replay and validate blocks. Instead, under async execution, you'll be able to tell if a block is valid without replaying it, which basically means we're going to relax the constraints on what exactly a Solana block is. The primary motivation of this is both to simplify the protocol and to lower hardware requirements, and it'll also play nice with consensus and just benefit overall network performance. That's I can say there's a lot more that's coming. I just don't think I'm really allowed to talk about some of the other things that are being, discussed currently about how to improve the Solana protocol. But I can say that a lot more is coming beyond what we have just discussed. And, we at Temporal are, obviously very focused on fixing the market structure on Solana. So, like the main problem that we're kind of thinking about right now is, how do we stop all these dApps from fleeing Solana and, building centralized RFQs, L1s, ETH L2s with single sequencers? Like how do we actually create a market structure that's both decentralized and more efficient than centralized ones? And we've got quite a bit coming up on that end as well. But hopefully this kind of gave everyone an idea of, what's going on in the shadows of the core world. Like things are happening with price and whatnot, and like the core developers, like we don't really care. Like I think our goal at the end of the day is, just make the protocol the best it can be, and users will come because the protocol is the best it can be. So it's